You're listening to international investment advisor Doug Goldstein on the Goldstein on Gelt show, the financial show where we'll talk about how you can make the most of your money. With all the confusing financial chatter bombarding you each and every day, Goldstein on Gelt will give you the practical information you want and need about living a financially stable life. Here's your host, money maven Doug Goldstein.
Okay, we are back. I'm very happy to have back on the Goldstein on Gelt show Diane Lang. She's been here a number of times before. If you missed those interviews, check it out at goldsteinongelt.com and just look up those interviews. She's also, of course, on YouTube with us. Diane, pleasure to have you back.
Thank you for having me back.
Now, Diane is a therapist, an educator. She's a life coach. She helps in many, many areas of life. And what I want to focus on today is a little bit about mothers getting back in the workforce because, as I think you know, I used to be partners with my mother when I was working on Wall Street. So it's a subject that's close to my heart. So
Great.
let me say, how should a mother decide if going back to work is the right thing for her?
Well, you know, going back to work seems like such a simple question, but it really isn't, especially for a mom, because we have a lot of things to consider when making that decision. Should I go back to work after, raising your kids, or even after just being home after maternity leave? So it's really a serious question, and there's really a few different questions moms need to ask themselves so they can make the best decision for themselves and their family. But one of the most important things I always tell my moms who I work with is whatever's going to make you happy is going to be the best, because a happy parent or a happy mom equals happy kids.
So you're not talking about the financial question here.
No, I'm not even going into the financial question, and I will get to that. But it's really important that the mom is happy because, for example, when I had my daughter, I knew I wanted to go back to work. And I knew that if I didn't go back to work, I wouldn't be happy. And if I'm not happy, then it's going to reflect on my child. And we know that moods and emotions are contagious. So it's really important for the mom to be happy. So really, always ask yourself that question first, if you have a choice. If it's out of financial necessity, which is a lot of the case here in the United States, we've been in a recession since about 2008. So a lot of moms don't have that opportunity to stay home. But if you do have that choice, then you should always ask yourself that question. Is this going to make me a happier person, a happier parent, happier mom? And if that is the answer, then yes, you should go back to work. And if the answer is no, then you should look into staying home. And there's also other options. If you decide that you do want to go back to work, there are, you don't have to go back to your old position and be full-time, have a large commute. There's other options. And we know here in the United States, one of the biggest things that moms love is being able to work part-time because they feel that they can have the best of both worlds. They can stay with their kids, but yet still have an outside life or a professional life and go to work.
And do you feel in the economy today there are possibilities for people to do that?
Yes, actually there are. What has happened is a lot of companies are now doing what we call a virtual office where they're able to work from home. I've actually had a lot of moms who have also had the opportunity from going full-time at a corporation in New York City where they decided to do what we call timeshare. So two moms would actually share the work week. So one might work 2 days, the other one might work 3 days, or they could work 2.5 days each. And, of course, you do split the paycheck. So, again, it has to be what you can afford in your family. But a lot of women will do that, so they can kind of have, again, the best of both worlds. And then I've had other moms who had the opportunity that they can have a virtual office and they can now take their job and work from home, which is great. But the one thing moms have to consider is if you're working from home, it doesn't mean that you're not going to need help, because working from home is still a struggle because you need to have a home office where you have to consider that, whatever times that you set aside for work still have to be you working. Right. So a lot of times you still need a nanny or a babysitter or even a mother's helper, like in the summer where you can have a college student or high school student, which would be less expensive, who would, be there to help with your child, keep them occupied, help them eat lunch, play outside. And if you can get a student who is going to be an education major, then it's great for them because they get a reference, they can use it as an internship, or they can get paid to do what they love. And it's kind of a win-win situation.
Yeah, that sounds like it's a good system. I also telecommute. I have my office, my day job in Jerusalem as a financial planner, but a lot of the work that I do, I'm able to do from anywhere. So I do work at home. But one of the difficulties that I had to deal with, that I think I eventually overcame with a very low-tech solution, was when I'm home working and the kids still wanted to have me there for one reason or another. So, of course, my low-tech solution was locking the door when I wasn't able to deal with them.
And you know what? That is definitely a great way to do it. But what I've noticed with moms is we get what's called mommy guilt. And a lot of the moms will feel bad, and they won't be able to give 100% of focus and concentration into their job because they hear their kids, whether they're crying or knocking on the door, or they stay right outside the door making noise, and it makes a mom feel very guilty. So that's why if you can have a mother's helper, and I always suggested this because, as you know, and I've mentioned before, I teach college. So I have a lot of college students who are education majors, and they're going to be teachers. And some of them already have worked in a preschool or a daycare setting or as a nanny. And those are perfect mother's helpers because, again, it's a little bit less expensive than going to, a nanny or a babysitter who's, older, or a preschool or a daycare setting. But they also, again, will already being educated in the field. So it's really a win-win situation. And the other thing is, too, if you're working from home and your company allows it, or you have your own business or doing something like you were saying, Doug, is you can make your hours during naps for children, if they're taking naps in the morning or the 2-hour nap. I have a client of mine who has a young child who's home, and he takes a nap between 12 and 2, and she'll do a majority of her work then, and then she'll do another chunk starting at about 6 at night till about 10 when her husband's home. So you can kind of work around it.
Right, the flex hours really help a lot.
Right, the flexible hours. And the timeshare is a really great opportunity if you want to stay at the job that you were at and your company allows it. And what we always tell moms is there's a lot of companies that are called family-friendly companies, and you can there's a magazine called Working Mother Magazine, and you can get it right online, so it doesn't matter where you're located. And every year in January, they put out a list of the top 100 family-friendly companies to work for, and it's a great opportunity for moms to look and say, this is the kind of company I want to work for, and send their resume to them, because these are companies that either have babysitting on site, they have timeshare, flex time, work from home, all those type of opportunities. So if you know you're going to go back to work and you're looking into that, whether it's, after your maternity leave or, in a year or two when they hit a specific age, really start doing your homework and look into what companies are family friendly that would allow me to have the lifestyle that I want where my family comes first.
Right, that's very practical. We are talking with Diane Lang, who's a therapist, an educator, a life coach. She talks about a number of topics. In fact, she's spoken on this show about dealing with some of the emotional issues in finance. If you missed those previous interviews, download them at goldsteinongelt.com. Diane, we've been talking about mothers staying home with the kids. What about fathers?
Well, I have to say I'm seeing a lot more of that. And one of the things you brought up before is it financially feasible? And that's a really important question. And now how parents or families make that decision is who's making the most money. It's not necessarily that the mom stays home anymore. It could be the dad. And it could also depend on who has the benefits. So we're seeing a lot of people that the mom might work full-time because she's a teacher and she gets great benefits, and the dad will only work part-time. He'll work maybe 9 to 1, so he's there to get the kids off the bus. And either way, it works fine as long as the decision is made by the family. And you want to ask yourself a question or talk to Doug about this. Is it financially feasible? And this question requires a lot of thought, because you have to consider not just how much money you're going to make, but you have to add in that most people have at least an hour commute each way, whether it's the mileage or whether it's traffic. So you have to consider the traveling. You have to consider the commuting costs, the gas, because I don't know about in Israel, but gas here is almost up to $4 in the New York area. Or if you're taking the train or a bus, is it worth it? And you have to worry about wardrobe, because you now have to dress corporate, whether you're male or female, daycare if needed, lunch, or any other added expenses like birthdays, Christmas parties, Christmas gifts, all those other things that happen at a workplace. So is it really financially feasible to even work outside the home? And if it is, which parent would be the one who would stay at their full-time job, and which one would be either to stay at home, whether it's mom or dad, or working part-time to bring in some extra money? So those are some of the questions.
Based on your list of questions, it sounds like it's not financially feasible for anyone to go to work.
Well, we're seeing a lot of moms starting their own businesses and working from home a majority of the time. And that is the biggest thing here, is moms are really finding their niches. What's missing in society that we can add? And moms do a great job of that. Moms have all these great blogs and websites and parenting websites that they're making great money off of. But again, as you know, being in this business, it's something that you have to remember. If you're going to start your own business, it might take 3 to 5 years before you even see any income coming back. But if you're working from home and you're not laying out a lot of money and you're using your computer and you have a home office, it makes it easier to start and easier to try because you don't have as much to lose.
Yeah, I think one of the disclaimers on this conversation that people could, or real takeaway that someone who's considering this is, before you decide to take the time off to stay at home, just sit with a financial planner and put together an actual financial plan to see not only what the current income and expense situation would be like, but not having the income, let's say, for 3 to 5 years, how will that affect you in the long term? Or how could you change your portfolio so that you can be sure that when you eventually retire, because presumably people are a little younger when they're having kids and they have a long time to go, when you eventually retire, you'll have enough money that you won't regret having stayed home. And my guess is a lot of people won't regret staying home with their kids.
No, and the honest truth is, as much as financial is a huge issue for this kind of decision, a lot of moms will make the decision even if it is a struggle after sitting with a financial planner because that's really what they feel they need to do, and it's priceless on raising your kids and having that special time with them. And that's, one of the things to always consider. Being a mom is a full-time job. You're working 24 hours, 7 days a week, no sick days, no vacation pay. It's a lot of responsibility. Are you ready for more? Because if you get another full-time job, now you have 2 full-time jobs. And that's a lot to handle, a lot of responsibility. So really it's something you want to consider along with the financial side of it is the emotional side. And, we all have to expect if you're a mom and you do make that decision to go back to work, whether it's out of financial necessity or it's because you choose to, you have to remember that the first few weeks to a few months back is going to be harder because you're going to have that mommy guilt. And that's something that we see more in moms than we do with dads. Dads don't seem to have the same daddy guilt as moms do because dads were brought up to be the provider and they feel that they're following in their role of what they're supposed to be doing. But for the mom, we were raised to be nurturers. So when we go outside of, staying home, we sometimes feel the guilt. And I'm generalizing because there are some moms who might not, but the majority do. But it does go away. And if it is what you truly want to do, you will feel happy being at work, and you'll appreciate the time when you come home with your kids, and you'll make sure it's special.
All right, that sounds like very, very wise advice. We've been talking to Diane Lang, who's a therapist. She's a life coach. She's a writer. She's a teacher. She's a regular guest on the Goldstein on Gelt show. Diane, we're just about out of time, but in the last few seconds, just tell me, how can people keep track of you and follow your work?
Well, they could go to my website, which is dlcounseling.com, and I also have a book on the subject called Baby Steps, The Path from Motherhood to Career, which you can get again at my website, which is dlcounseling.com, or on Barnes & Noble or Amazon.com.
Diane Lang, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt show.